Televiziunea română, întâlnirile JTI și Fundația Art Production vă recomandă Garantat 100%.
Doamnelor și domnilor, bună seara! Bun venit la o ediție specială a emisiunii Garantat 100%. Invitatul nostru s-a născut în 1938 în Moravia, în fosta Cehoslovacie. Încă de când era foarte mic, își dorea să devină fotograf. A cules și a vândut fragi pentru a-și cumpăra primul aparat de fotografiat. Pe urmă, a devenit inginer de aeronave, dar pasiunea lui pentru fotografie a fost mult mai puternică, așa că la un moment dat a abandonat totul și a devenit fotograf profesionist. Tocmai se întorsese din România de o zi sau două, în 1968, când Uniunea Sovietică a invadat Cehoslovacia în încercarea de a opri primăvara de la Praga. Invitatul nostru a făcut peste 5.000 de fotografii în acele zile. Dacă s-ar fi știut așa ceva, imaginile astea au făcut în conjurul planetei, dacă s-ar fi aflat așa ceva în Cehoslovacia, viața sa și a familiei sale ar fi fost într-un real pericol. Așa că i s-a spus Fotograful Anonim. Târziu, după câțiva ani, după ce a fugit în Anglia, a putut să povestească public despre evenimentele crunte care avuseseră loc la Praga. De atunci, cariera sa internațională, lucrările sale au devenit subiect de legendă. Invitatul nostru e unul dintre cei mai mari fotografi ai lumii, e un reper în istoria fotografiei. Acum a revenit în România pentru a lansa un album, albumul Invaziei 68, care conține fotografii din timpul ocupării capitalei cehoslovace de către trupele Pactului de la Varșovia. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here.
It's me who is very happy to be here with
Thank you. So it is very hard for someone who tries to make an interview with you as long as you have said, and I quote, "I tried to be a photographer. I don't know how to talk. I'm not interested in talking. If I say something, this can be found in my photos. I am not interested in explaining things, in saying why and how." End of quotation. This was you.
That's correct. I still agree. I don't know when I said it, but I still agree.
Sir, back in '68, 1 or 2 days before the Soviet invasion in Prague, you had just arrived home back from Romania. You had been here to take pictures of the Roma people, but we will come back to the Roma people. How was the exact moment when the Soviets got into Prague?
You mean how I received the news?
Right.
Okay, so you are right. I just got back from Romania, and I think, in fact, it was the next day. I went to sleep, and it must have been, it was dark, 3, 4 o'clock at night. The telephone rang. I pick it up. It was my friend, girl. She said, "Russians are here." I said, "Okay." I went back to sleep.
So you thought it was a joke?
Yeah, I thought she was drunk or so she needed to call me 3 times to convince me that it is true.
Wow.
So she said, "Listen, you idiot, go, open the window and listen." So I went, I was in the basement like this. My window were up, so I climbed there, I opened the window, and I could hear heavy heavy airplanes flying every 2 minutes. So I realized something was going on. And I was extremely lucky that I didn't spend all my films when I was in Romania. So I still have enough film. So I took my films and I went on the streets.
So you took around 5,000 photographs.
I can't tell you exactly how it was, but it was about 200 films, I think.
Well, if I think of a Romanian photographer,
Yeah.
and if he hears you right now, he will say probably that in Romania it would have been impossible to have so many films.
Okay, so I can explain it to you, you know. It was impossible also in Czechoslovakia. But in that period, all the Czech movie makers, they worked with black and white film.
Right.
And of course, there was the traffic of the film. So when they got on the end of the 60 meters, 30 meters, they don't need, it was not good to put it in the camera.
Right.
So we were getting this film, 4 movies, which was Eastern Europe, which was German film called Orvo.
Right.
And there were no numbers because it was 4 movies. And so we all were cutting the film for ourselves. We were loading the films. So we have got so much film. For example, if I work in the interior, I could just take few films, change the rule, and go on to something else. So there were no problems with the film. Of course, there were some people who ran out of the film, but luckily I've got enough. So every night when I got back, I loaded the new film,
Right.
and I went again.
Right. So is that true that in one of those days you were shot at by a Soviet soldier and you were pursued on the narrow streets near the Wenceslas Square in Prague? Is that true?
From time to time, I was getting really close. Yeah. And if something starts to happening, you run. For me, it was most important to run away with the film than film being taken out. So I could sometimes hear above me the shooting. But what was fantastic, people were helping. They were blocking the soldiers.
Yep.
And it is true. Once I was photographing from the top of Wenceslas Square, and it was full of the Russian soldiers with the tanks, and they thought I was a sniper.
Right.
So I was running over the roofs, and I find that in the house there was a friend of mine. He was living there, so I left the film there, and I succeeded to get out. They didn't get my film, but the biggest problem was that next day when I came, there were no films there. A friend of mine, he sent them to Vienna.
Sir, did you know at that time that Romania was the only country that refused to take part in the invasion, and that Romania publicly condemned the abuse of the sister countries in Czechoslovakia?
Not really. It was such a mess, and there were so many things going on that I got so many other worries than just, in fact, I didn't know. For example, there were the first soldiers, which I saw, which came not on the tanks, but on the fast-moving vehicles, because they're supposed to get in the radio station. I remember they have got the beret, and everybody said they were Bulgarian. Yesterday I was there, an ambassador from Latvia told me that they were all Latvians, So it was such a mess, in fact, that I really didn't know it all. I've got many more other worries.
Did you find about that afterwards? Did you find out that?
Yes, sure. Because, for example, in this book, you have this star, and you have all the countries who participated are there, and Romania is not there.
Right. Sir, how was the moment of getting together with your compatriots? Of feeling like an assaulted nation. How were the relationship in between the Czechs in Prague in those days?
For me, as much as 68 was tragedy, I'm very happy that I was able to live this period.
Why?
Because I could never believe that people can change so quickly. That people who are not nice to each other, that suddenly they pay attention to each other, that it went to the absurdities, you know. It went to the thieves made a declaration that they stopped to make the thieves because Czech police has more important things to do.
Wow.
You know, it was completely absurd. And it was a miracle. It was a miracle, you know, and I'm really happy. I think it was in history, even in contemporary. We maybe when the big tragedy happened in the United States,
Yep.
maybe it was something similar, you know. And I think it can happen in any country because suddenly, if there is something, it was the case. It was not important if you are communist. If you are not communist, it was not important if you were young, if you were old. You know, the old people, many times, these simple people, they don't like look on the young people with the long hair. There were this old woman writing the poet about, about the young boy with the long hair.
Yes.
You know, it was incredible.
So do you think of the human condition, of a general human condition, do we have to, I don't know, to pass through worse in order to understand that we could be together in a normal way?
You know, I think it is, the question is much more complicated and
is.
also much more simple. I think you, generally in your life, you have to lose something in order to appreciate what you have. You know, you can start the day and wake up and you think it's fantastic. I don't have any pain. It should be enough for you to be happy. But the people wake up and say, oh, terrible, what is waiting for me? You know, the things are much more simple. But I agree with you that sometimes we have to go through the pain, either as a society or either as each of us.
Right. 1 year later, after the invasion, you were with a Czech theater company in London. And your colleagues and friends, the actors, were looking in shock to a newspaper. It could have been Sunday Times, maybe. And they saw the impressive pictures that you took in Prague. And you were not able to tell them that you were the author of those photographs.
Do you know what is the biggest joke? I'm doing 2 important exhibitions next year in the United States. And one of these curators is writing on my period in England. She was meeting so many people, well, because I used to live in England, and there were this man who I stayed with him every winter and said, you know, you were every day you were eating the potatoes and drinking potato with the caraway seed and drinking milk. And I never understood why, till your mother came to Wales, because I was in the Temple of Wales. Then she did exactly the same. I said, David, my mother never came to Wales. Oh, she said, oh, I made a mistake, it was in London. My mother never came to London. Okay, he made a mistake, but in this story, which is in fact in this book,
Right.
and which I really believe that it is not true. There are 3 months difference. And in my mind, in 40 years or 30 years, I put these 2 events together. I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to lie. But suddenly, she found out that I was twice in London. Once it was on the beginning of the year, and that it was at the time.
This story is all over the internet.
Yes,
All over.
Yes, and I have to correct it. Yeah, but for me it was a big, you know, you realize it on other people, and I didn't want to lie, but visually I see it, getting out of the hotel. This actress is getting out, looking at the Sunday Times, and I was walking. And it didn't happen like that.
So it's more like a projection than like a real story.
It is definitely, I don't want to lie, but you never can trust your memory. I'm keeping the diary every day, not every day. Like now, when I was in Paris for 2 weeks, I didn't put anything on my because nothing happened. But in the moment when I start to travel, I keep the things. Just no literature, but
Facts, you mean?
Yeah. And so you can really trust your notes, but not your memory.
But you can trust.
You know, for example, now somebody is going to write the book, my biography next year. And the friend of mine, the French, he said, you have to do it. Because once you are not going to if you don't do it, and you are not going to be here, they are going to come to us, and what we say is going to be true.
Wow. You said that you will rather trust your photographies than your memory.
Yes, definitely.
Sir,
and for that reason, and she find it, I went to my contacts and I realized it was really true. Because there were some other pictures between.
fascinating. Sir, you were living out of what when you were living in London? Because you never did editorial photography, you never did advertising. You were living out of what?
I must say I was in a relatively very good situation, you know. I left Czechoslovakia and I got to Magnum. Suddenly, nobody knows, nobody saw my pictures because they were not published with my name. And I was in Magnum. And I became the Cartier-Bresson because my friend, nobody ever saw my pictures, but I became somebody known. Nobody believed why. But what I wanted to say, my pictures were published all over for the first anniversary. And Magnum make a lot of money for me. So I came and I got this money.
You got paid?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got this money, which for some Western photographers, maybe it was for 3 months or 5 months, but I was able to live for many years out of it. Because I never slept in the hotels, I was sleeping outside, not eating in restaurants. I got big chance that I grow up in the country like Czechoslovakia. It was a big chance because, and big chance was that I was 30 years old.
Right.
I was not kid. I didn't want to have all these toys, the cars,
The gadgets.
and these things. On the contrary, already in Czechoslovakia, we hated these people who were sitting in the cafe, you know. We didn't want to be like them. When I came to France, I saw them, you know. So I wanted to keep the healthy anger again, these people which I didn't want to become. And in fact, I was saying, I'm going to show you.
You said something, and I quote, "This is one of the many important things I learned from Cartier-Bresson. You must always ask where the money comes from." What do you mean by that?
The question was very contemporary because my last project I did in Israel.
Right?
And there are 12 photographers on the project. The money are not from Israel. Money are mainly from United States, from Jewish organizations.
Let's say that the project is called The Wall.
Wall, which is the book which just recently came out, and it was published in many countries. And so, first of all, you have to question where the money comes from, because they can be the money which you don't want to have nothing to do with it. Like, I refuse all the time the advertising, or you have to be very careful. Usually these people doesn't influence our project. Yeah. In fact, with the sponsor, it was very interesting when I have got an exhibition on invasion on Russia. There were the sponsors, and for the first time, they didn't want to be mentioned. Because there were Czech sponsors who were doing their business in Russia. Yeah. So then you have to question who the sponsors are. Well, then, if you know that you agree that this is like the Czech press draw or something, so I like beer. I don't have problem with it. It doesn't destroy the health. It can sometimes too, but so that if somebody pay, he try to control it. And that's the case which is the most important. And then you really have to be extremely careful, especially, for example, in the last project. So you are invited to work in Israel. There are Israeli money, not Israeli money, there are Jewish sponsors, and they probably have certain expectation. And they might, in the future, would like to control it. And you are in the group of 12 photographers. How can you control it? So I don't want to go too detail. I made 4 trips to Israel before I signed the contract, when I was really sure that I'm looking on the human being as they are. For me, there is not, in my look on the people, there is not much difference between Palestinian and Israeli. I look on the gypsies as a people. And what I don't like on some other people, I don't like on gypsies too.
So no.
I'm not this emotion, everything what they are doing is fantastic.
Right.
Anyway, so I think you have to really pay the attention where the money comes from.
So there's something fascinating about manipulation, because a normal person will think that the photographer is a manipulator. But sometimes the photographer can be manipulated.
I think I'm a manipulator. You know, the Ottomar Kreischer from the theater, he used to say, Joseph, you are the liar. But you are the liar, you lie because you want to tell the truth. And he was saying that my picture from the theater are much more true if this would be the strong documentation of what was going on. So if you look on my last book on gypsies, gypsies are not like that. I was using gypsies to tell us something about the human beings. and I use for this case gypsies. I hope that, for example, the book on the wall, which is published, that this is not only about the wall in Israel. That then can apply to any wall.
Right? Right. Why did you choose gypsies? I mean, why didn't you choose Romanians or Hungarians or, I don't know, Czechs or French? Why gypsy?
Listen, there are certain things which I am not really interested. Why? I'm much more interested in doing them without asking many questions, going as deep as possible and not question. Of course there are the answers, and all the time people ask me. Generally, and I think it is true, is my answer is I don't know why, but I can tell you that once I started, I couldn't stop. And I think it was mainly the music which made me to run. Because I like the folk music. In fact, I go so far that I'm saying I was not born in the village where I was born. I was born 50 kilometers more on the south, because there's the music and the songs which come from the land which I might come to, I must come to. You know, we have in family some dark people too. But I don't think that I have any connection. I remember I went to Moravia, and I talked to my cousin, and she said, you know, I was in the hospital, and when I was leaving, the lady, the doctor, she came to me and said, but Madame Koudelka, you are not gypsy. It's not very interesting, you know. Through Moravia, there were the Turks, there were the Genghis Khan, there were the Germans, there were the Hungarians. Listen, we are a mixture of everything. So why to bother? You like something, you do it, and that's enough.
Sir, there's a journalist, his name is Sean O'Hagan, and he wrote about you in 2008. It was an important interview. But at a certain moment, he said, and I quote, "Alongside Robert Frank, Josef Koudelka is the last of the great hard-bitten romantics of the 20th century reportage." And I will ask you if you think of your social and artistic position as a point of reference. Do you think of yourself through your achievements in life?
I don't understand exactly what you mean. Maybe I will answer you. Maybe I understand. You know, as a photographer, in my life, I've got different stickers. So in Czechoslovakia, I was theater photographer.
Yep.
Yeah. Then I left Czechoslovakia. Then I photographed gypsies, and I got the exhibition in Czechoslovakia. So I was the guy who photographed gypsies. On the West, they didn't know these pictures till I published the book. So then, Josef, gypsies. Nobody knew that I did the picture from Prague 68 because I didn't put my name for 16 years on it. So when the pictures were published, so I was the photographer of Prague 68. So then I get to my hand the panoramic camera, and I was interested in the landscape. And I published already 10 books on the landscape, how the human being influenced the landscape. So, and strangely enough, 25 years already. And maybe I might be the most, maybe in the career, I might be the very important landscape photographer. But this is not really important for me, you know.
That's what I was asking.
I'm 75 years old.
May you live answer.
I still love to take photographs, to get up in the morning, to go around, to take photographs as much as in the beginning. And I know that this is not normal, because there were many people who stopped. I used to say that photographers die when they are 40 years old, and I think most of them, they die.
How will you define your personal way of understanding freedom?
If I should be very short, for me, freedom is what I have to do.
Is loneliness or solitude, are these two words conditions of freedom? You have to be a lonely person, you have to be inside solitude in order to be free?
Listen, I love to be between people, but many times I have to be very much alone. And if I photograph the landscape, I don't want to see anybody. I just want to listen to the birds. I want to feel that I'm part of this landscape. Anybody, I can walk with my girlfriend or with my children when I go to photograph. I must be alone.
Do you ever think of adapting to the times you live in right now?
I'm adapting all the time. I think, listen, the life is changed. And that's the condition of the human being, there are little changes in the body. And if I didn't change as a photographer, I probably have stopped a long time ago.
You're
Like,
so right.
I would never photograph, for example, Israel, if I didn't find a subject which I'm really interested in.
Do you pay attention to new techniques, to digital, to gadgets? To...
No, I don't pay attention, but for example, the last project, one of the last projects which I have got exhibition in Marseille this year, it's called the Vestige. So, which means, I want to call it the ruins, but the French say it's better vestige, and I'm quite happy because I keep the ruins for other project, and I think the final exhibition and the book is going to be called Ruins, because for me it's much more direct, no question, and it must be called. So, biggest problem with this, I have been photographing I visited all countries around the Mediterranean, 19 countries, and I photographed more than 200 the archaeological sites.
Yep.
I started on the beginning, I didn't know why. I have got exhibition it's the same with gypsies. I got the exhibition in Rome. I walk around, I got in this place. I shot one of the pictures which became most known from what I did. And suddenly I get involved. Yeah. So the problem with this Marseille exhibition was, there were limited money for me to finance my project around the Marseille. With the help of the Magnum and French Institute around the Mediterranean, we find a way. But still, you have to shoot pictures, you have to buy the film, you have to develop it, and so most of the money, they went to buy the film, to develop them, to make the connections. Well, about 6 months ago, a friend of mine in Magnum told me, listen, Josef, the Leica, they are doing new camera, and I would suggest you take your film camera, which you use normally, which is the Fuji camera, and let's go to have a look on them. Maybe they can do something. So, to cut it short, so now I have one camera which is digital camera. Nobody else has this camera in the world, and it permits me to have the freedom of money, that I don't need to find all this money for the films and developing. I can pay my ticket to go to Rome, where I was 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and I can sleep in the houses of my friends, and every day go out, take pictures, to do whatever I can. So it's fantastic.
It is.
And so before I came to this conclusion, of course, I needed to test it. So I made 4 trips with both cameras. On the last trip, I realized that I'm taking more camera with the digital camera, more film, more pictures with the digital camera, with the analog camera. And I enjoy it more. It's fantastic. Viva la revolution. I have 75 years. Viva la revolution.
are at least 3, 4, or 5 important journalists. They had impressive interviews with you because you're not very common with the interviews. You usually avoid interviews. But all of them will say that in a certain way you are not from this world, that you belong to the 20th century, that you belong to a romantic world, to an emotional world that doesn't exist anymore. Do you agree to this point of view?
It's not me to say. I'm very happy to listen whatever people say, and it's interesting for me to know how people react to my work, but it is not my interest.
But when you look around, you as a person, will you think of the 21st century that it is less emotional than the previous one?
Listen, for me, doesn't make any difference no, like this 13 years ago. I'm still in the same century. Like I'm still with the same people. For me, you know, I'm alive. I'm in this world, and I react to what's going on. And I'm not philosopher. I'm not intellectual. I'm the simple guy who was born in the Central Europe. Like quite a few good photographers. Quite a few good photographers.
Right.
Yeah, who were born here, you know. Yeah. Quite a few from Romania too, or from Hungary. Yeah. So I think I'm one part of them. And maybe it reflects in our work. Yeah.
There's a huge difference in between a book and an exhibition. You said that. There are two different worlds, the book and the exhibition. But I saw one of your interviews, and you said something like that. One of your editors once said that about a major book of yours. He said, Joseph, I will not make any money out of this book, but I am proud that I did the book.
Yeah, it is German printer,
Right.
Steidl.
Right.
You know, if you know what you want, you have to get it. And this guy is very difficult. Possibly I might not do any other book with him, but he was the only guy who really could do the gypsies how I wanted to have them. And as much he is difficult, he knows what is good, he knows how to get it, and he pay all attention that you are happy with the result. He printed book twice, completely. He said, I didn't make any money on this book, but I am very proud that I did this book, and I'm happy.
Have you ever been around the idea that your name is Josef Koudelka? Do you ever think of Josef K. from Kafka's novel?
No, it's not my case. Many times, all the time I receive the letters,
Joseph K.
Yeah, and, if I come to Magnum, the thing is, so, no.
Right. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It has been a privilege to meet you. And I don't know, on behalf of everybody here, my colleagues, I will say just, may you live long, be healthy, and do your job.
I'll be very happy if I can do it in order just to complete what I would like to do. And I still have quite a few things to do.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Mulțumim tuturor celor care au fost alături de noi. Trebuie să le mulțumesc din suflet prietenilor și partenerilor noștri de la Centrul Ceh, prin intermediul cărora a avut loc întâlnirea asta minunată de azi. O să-i mulțumesc în mod special prietenului nostru René Cubașe, un statornic prieten al acestei emisiuni. Expoziția Invazie 68 a fost un eveniment important organizat la București cu sprijinul Centrului Ceh și al Institutului francez. Ne vedem săptămâna viitoare, să fiți sănătoși, noapte bună!
Televiziunea română, întâlnirile JTI și Fundația Art Production vă recomandă Garantat 100%.